Hey guys, my name is Tensor. Welcome to another Flutter tutorial video. Today we're going to be cleaning up our Utopian Rocks mobile application by fixing up the top bar so that it will be themed properly, as well as adding the filter to the application so that we can filter our contributions by category. Also, while we're doing all of this, we want to create a launcher icon for our application, and I'll talk about how that works as well. Now if we go over to the Utopian Rocks website, you can see at the top left we have an icon, and we of course want to use that icon inside of our application, and we're going to use this image for the actual launcher icon as well. So I went ahead and downloaded the image, and it's a PNG, and I put it into our assets images folder along with a Utopian icon, which is the icon for the actual platform Utopian. Now inside of our PubSpec YAML, let's grab both of these images and put them into our assets bundle by creating the key for the assets and then putting both of the images after it. And while we're in here, let's add the Flutter launcher icons library to the dev dependencies and then also specify the options for our Flutter launcher icons. We want to specify that we want to override the default Flutter debug icon, which is just the Flutter symbol. The image that we want to use is this utopia.png file, so we specify for both Android and iOS that we're going to use that image. And because the image is not a square or a circle, we need to specify a background color that we want to add to the image. So I'm just going to specify a white color, so I've just put in the hexadecimal for white, and then that will basically just fill out the square or circle. Now to finish this process, we need to go into our command prompt, and we want to run Flutter Packages pub run Flutter launcher icons :main. This will go and grab our PubSpec YAML and then configure and override the icons for both iOS and Android. Once it's finished running, you can go ahead and relaunch your application into your emulator. And just to verify that this icon is now working, I'm just going to hit the square here, and now I can see the icon up in the left-hand corner. I can also exit out of the application completely and come into the applications drawer to see the icon as well down here. Now let's go ahead and change the top bar so that it has the theming that we want and so that it also has that image on it. Currently, inside of our app bar, we just have a text widget for the title, but I'm going to replace this with a Flex widget so that we can have both a text widget and a image widget. So here we have the Flex, and then inside of it, I'm going to put the image into a flexible, and then I'm just going to put the text after it. With our Flex, though, we want to make it horizontal so that they'll appear right next to one another. So we need to specify the direction. And then we want to mess with the main axis and cross axis alignments. The main axis alignment is the alignment along the horizontal direction, and we want our two widgets to be spaced out evenly. Then we also want to kind of center them in the vertical direction, so we can mess with the cross axis alignment to achieve this. And here you can see the result of this code. So we've got our Flex, which surrounds all of this. And then we've got the flexible with a flex of 2, which surrounds our image. And then we've got the title after it. If we want them farther apart, we can change the main axis alignment. We can make it something like space around. And you can see that the image kind of gets pushed to the left a little bit more, and the title gets pushed to the right a little bit more. And we can even push them further to their two extremes by using space between. But personally, I like the space evenly look for this particular application. Now this top nav bar is not exactly the color that we want. The theme that we want is a sort of black theme with a kind of bluish green for the accent. So we can come into the material app here and specify the default theme for our application. And so we just need to add a theme data widget and specify the primary color and the accent color. Now I selected both of these colors by basically using a color picker to take a look at the colors on the website. And so you can see here we've got this nice sort of blackish blue color for the top, and then we've got the accent, which is this sort of greenish blue color on the bottom. And of course this proliferates to each of the elements of the application as well. We can also go into our information drawer file and make it so that the top header of the information drawer has the same color as our application. So it uses this black color, which is slightly different than the normal material black color. Now also, if you guys watched when we created the information drawer, you'll remember that I created this center widget, which I just kind of left here. And I mentioned that I wanted to put an image inside of it. And the image that we want to put into it is the utopian icon, which we just brought in. So all we really need to do is specify the child for this center, and then specify that it's an image asset widget, and then pass in the path for this image asset. And now you can see here that inside of our drawer we have the actual image down here at the bottom. We've got the aesthetic that we want for this application, so let's now build in the filter functionality so that we can filter through the contributions based on their category. To get started with our filter, we want to go ahead and come into our Contribution Bloc file and specify a new stream, which will have a list of contributions inside of it called filtered results. And I'm going to make this stream into an observable. And then we want to specify a new sync, which will be a behavior subject like our page name behavior subject as well. And we'll seed this with a value of all, which will be a string. And of course, we also want to create the getters for the stream and for the sync. So I've created the getter for the filtered results, and then a getter for the filter. And then we also want to add the sync to our dispose function so that we properly dispose of it. Now to actually create the filter logic, I'm going to come into our utils.dart file and specify a function called applyFilter, which takes in a string, which is the filter, and then a list of contributions, which will be the contributions, and then it will return the filtered list of contributions. Now basically we're going to use this list that we created up here with all the categories in it to specify our filter logic. So each one of these will be the actual filter string that we're going to pass into this function. And when the string is all, then we want to display all of the categories or all of the contributions. So down here in apply filter, we first want to create the logic so that we can actually filter through the contributions. And we'll just check to see if the filter itself is equal to all. And if it is not equal to all, then we want to take our contribution list and we basically want to get all of the contributions where the contribution category is equal to the filter string. So if I'm searching for video tutorials, then we'll only get back contributions that are video tutorials. And of course, these items need to be passed back into a list so that we can then pass them back as a list of contribution type. If this if statement comes back as false, we just want to return the original list of contributions. Now we can come back into the Contribution Bloc file and import our utils file. And then down inside of the Contribution Bloc constructor, we can set up our filtered results sync. The filter results sync will equal a observable where we combine the latest two data events from two streams using our apply filter function. So we get the filter, which is the string, and then the results, which are the contributions, and we pass all of them into the apply filter function, and then we create a new observable based off of the results of this function. And of course, we want that observable to be a broadcast stream so that we can listen on it multiple times. Just as an aside, you guys don't have to separate the logic for your block like I did by putting it into a utils file. I just did it this way because I like to have only streams inside of my block, but actually it's more idiomatic to have all of the logic inside of the block class. Now that we've finished setting up the filter logic for our contribution block, let's go ahead and create a new component, and I'm going to call this component the bottom bar. So I'm just going to create a new file called bottombar.dart inside of the components folder. And essentially this is going to be a bar on the bottom of the screen, and the filter itself will be a menu that's inside of that bar where we can just click it and it will pop up with selections where we can select the icon of the category that we want to filter by. The bottom bar itself will of course be a stateless widget, so we want it to extend stateless widget. And because we're messing with the contribution block, we need to bring it into this file. And we also need to bring in our utils file as well because we need access to that contributions list. With this widget, we need to pass in the contribution block because remember, we've actually grabbed the contribution block further up the widget tree, so we can just pass it from our main root widget down to this bottom bar. The basis for our bottom bar will of course be a bottom application bar widget. So let's just throw that into our build function. We can go ahead and go back into our main.dart file, bring in the actual widget itself as a import, and then add it to our scaffold using a property called bottom sheet. We just put in the bottom sheet, which is a persistent bottom sheet, and we just specify that we want to use our bottom bar. And of course we need to pass in the contribution block, which we're getting from up here. Now let's go ahead and set up the actual insides of this bottom bar widget that we're creating. So we want to specify a color that we want the actual bottom app bar to be, and I'm going to specify our accent color. Then we need to put in a child so that we can actually put in our menu, and I'm going to put in a row widget. And the main reason why I'm going to use a row is because this widget is actually going to have multiple different things inside of it, but we'll be adding those later. Now, of course, if the row is just empty, you can see that the actual bottom bar doesn't show up because it doesn't actually have any height. So for our menu, I'm going to create a padding widget inside of the row, and I'll just make it so that the widget has some padding on the left so that it gets pushed to the right of our bar. I'm going to create a function here called generate menu. And this will take in our categories, which will be a list of strings, and then the actual contribution block. We're just executing the function as the child for the padding widget. And the widget that we're going to return from our generate menu function is a pop-up menu button where the generic parameter is a string. This pop-up menu button will allow us to essentially connect the logic from our block to the actual user interface. First, we can just create a tooltip so the user will see this if they hover over the menu. It'll just say filter contribution categories. Then we'll create a onSelected function, which will execute when we select the actual menu. And we want to say the category for the menu button gets passed into our blocks sync. So we just take the category string, pass it into the blocks filter sync, and then that executes the filter functionality, which then filters the contributions. So now to actually build the physical selection items for the menu, we need to create an item builder, which takes in the build context, and then it creates a bunch of different buttons inside of the menu itself. So for this function, we'll grab the categories list, which we have inside of our utils file, and then we want to map along it and then generate a bunch of pop-up menu item widgets. So let's go through each pop-up menu item. We'll give each one a height of 40 pixels. The value for the item will be the actual category. Then we'll have the child for the pop-up menu item be a list tile with a leading icon. And we can grab the icon data for our actual categories by calling on the icons map, which we have on our utils file, and then passing in the category string. So we're essentially just iterating through this list here and getting all of these strings out, and then we're passing them into the icons map here to get out the actual icon character code. And of course, these character codes mean nothing unless we use the Utopicons font. So we need to specify the font family for the icon data. And we also want to use our colors map to properly color the icons. So again, we can take the category string and pass it into the color map to get the actual color out. After the icon, we also want the actual category name. So we'll just create a text widget and then we'll pass in the category string. And then of course we need to take all of these widgets and then put them into a list. So now if we open up our application, you can see down here we have the icon for the menu. And if I click on it, we now have our menu. And for each of the categories, we have an icon and then a string. And of course, for right now, we can select these items and they actually will not do anything. And that's because we haven't actually connected this part of our blocks logic to our list view. So to finish this off and make it so that the logic works properly, we just need to come into our list page component and change the stream that the stream builder is using to build the actual page with our filtered results stream, rather than the normal results stream. So we're just using the filtered results stream to basically build out the list view. And now as you can see, if I come in here and I select one of these categories, say development, now we only get development contributions inside of the list view. And if I go over to the next page, this same is also true. So until I come back in here and I click the All button, it will show us only the selected contribution category. Alright guys, well I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the box below. And if you dislike this video, then by all means downvote it as much as you like. Have a good night.